Welcome back, deep divers. This time we're really diving deep into something that's super interesting to me. Holistic addiction treatment. We're going to get into the really fascinating stuff, going way beyond the typical definitions.
Yeah, you're right. People often think, oh, addiction treatment, it's just about stopping the substance use. And I mean, of course, that's important, but holistic treatment takes a step back. It's kind of like saying, okay, but how did we even get here?
It's like detective work, but for your well-being.
Hmm.
You're not just looking at the symptoms, but the root causes of the addiction itself, right?
Exactly.
So tell me more about this whole person approach. What makes it so different?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that addiction, it's not just a physical dependence, right? It's
Oh,
this whole complex web of things like physical, mental, emotional, even spiritual factors, all playing a role. Yeah. And so imagine someone struggling with alcohol addiction. A lot of traditional programs would focus mainly on helping them stay sober, which, don't get me wrong, super important. But a holistic approach, it still aims for sobriety, but it asks, okay, what else is going on here?
okay. So what do you mean by that? Like, give me an example of this digging deeper in action.
Sure. So let's say someone's carrying around some past trauma they've never dealt with, or maybe there's some like unresolved grief. Heck, even just like nutritional deficiencies can actually play a part.
Really?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Holistic treatment tries to find all of that, address it. It's about uncovering those hidden things that traditional models might miss.
So it's like instead of just putting a Band-Aid on the problem, you're actually trying to figure out what caused it in the first place.
You got it. And then, you can start finding healthier ways to actually cope.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's what I find so interesting about it. Like, it's this idea that healing can come from all these different places, not just, a pill.
Right.
But before we get to the how of it all,
Hmm.
the actual therapies and techniques, let's talk about why someone would even choose this path. For someone listening who's like, maybe this is for me, what are some unique benefits they might find with holistic treatment?
Well, I think one of the big ones is this focus on giving you healthy coping skills.
Okay.
Life, it throws curveballs. So, holistic treatment, it's about helping you navigate those without falling back on substances. You're aiming for that long-term change, not just a quick fix.
So you're not just learning how to stop a behavior, you're learning how to replace it with something healthier.
Exactly. And because you're addressing those underlying causes that we were talking about, you often see a huge reduction in things like stress and anxiety. And it's not about masking them, it's about you actually developing that inner strength to handle them.
It's about empowering yourself to face those challenges head on, which I imagine probably does wonders for your self-esteem too, huh?
100%. A lot of people find they have a way stronger sense of self, a clearer identity after going through holistic treatment. It's like, this is who I am without the addiction.
Right.
And, recovery, it's not just about, not using substances anymore. It's about reclaiming your life. And that can be a really powerful, transformative journey.
Okay, so we've covered what it is and why it matters, but now I want to get into the really interesting part, the how.
The therapies themselves.
Yes. And one that I have to admit, I was like, what? When I first heard about it, is equine therapy. Connecting with horses to work through addiction. How does that even work?
I know, right? It sounds a little out there, but that bond between humans and horses, it's incredibly powerful. Especially in this setting, horses, they have this amazing ability to like sense our emotions and then they kind of reflect them back to us. And they do it without judgment, which is really cool.
And for someone who's dealing with all that shame and guilt that can come with addiction, to have that kind of like unconditional acceptance from this 1,200-pound animal,
Right.
it's got to be pretty powerful.
You're exactly right. There was actually this really interesting study, I think it was at the University of California, San Diego, and they found that veterans with PTSD, and they also had substance use disorders, the ones who did equine therapy, they saw their PTSD symptoms go down significantly. And get this, it was even better than traditional talk therapy.
Wow.
It's because horses, they don't judge, they just connect. And that can be huge for someone who's used to feeling judged all the time.
Yeah, totally. It's like they cut through all the noise and get right to what's going on inside,
Exactly.
which is amazing. Okay, but let's switch gears for a second, talk about another therapy that I think a lot of people can relate to, music therapy. I mean, we all know music can be powerful, but what's the science behind it? How does it actually work in a therapeutic setting?
Well, think about it. Music, it kind of bypasses that logical part of our brain, It goes straight for our emotional centers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it can bring up memories, change our mood, even help us process these like really tough emotions that we don't even have words for.
So it's like music gives you a language for those emotions.
Yeah, exactly. And in therapy, it can look like a lot of different things. Like you might listen to music that brings up certain feelings, or you could write your own songs to kind of work through experiences. Some people even use instruments. Sometimes just like drumming can be really therapeutic.
Yeah, I can see that. I remember reading about this study, I think it was at the University of Melbourne, and they found that group drumming circles actually helps people in recovery build connections with each other and feel less isolated,
Oh, wow.
which is huge because we're social creatures, right?
Absolutely. That sense of belonging, that shared experience, it's so healing. And speaking of getting in touch with our creative side, have we talked about art therapy yet?
Okay, yes. Art therapy. Everyone's inner child is probably jumping for joy right now.
Hmm.
But really, what is it about art that makes it such a powerful tool for healing? Even if someone's not, like, an artist.
It's like sometimes we can't always say what we're feeling, but we can express it through art. It lets us tap into that subconscious part of ourselves, work through things we might not even realize are there. And the best part, there's no right or wrong way to do it.
So even if I can't even draw a stick figure, just the act of making something can be therapeutic.
Exactly. Painting, drawing, sculpting, even just doodling. It's about using that creative energy as a way to communicate,
Yeah.
to explore what's going on inside. You'd be amazed at what people discover about themselves through art.
I bet. It's so interesting to me how all of these therapies, the equine therapy, music therapy, art therapy, they might seem kind of out there at first, but they're all getting at this really basic part of how we heal. It really shows you how powerful it can be to approach recovery from that holistic perspective, like looking at the whole person, not just the addiction.
For sure. Although it's important to keep in mind that holistic treatment, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right. So how do you know if it's the right path for someone? What are some things to think about?
That's a great question. Well, if someone's tried those traditional treatments and they're still not finding what they're looking for, that holistic approach, it could be a breath of fresh air, a new way of looking at things.
So for someone who feels like they've hit a wall with the more conventional approaches, this could be a way to break through that.
Yeah, for sure. It could also be a really good fit for someone who just wants something a little more personalized, something that's designed for them and what they're going through.
And I'm sure for someone who really connects with this idea of getting to the root of their addiction, like understanding that why behind it all, that feels like a big part of it too, right?
Absolutely. Holistic treatment, it's all about giving you the power to heal yourself. It gives you the tools, the knowledge to understand and address those root causes. You're not just putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms, you're aiming for real change.
It's not just about what you're not doing anymore. It's about what you are choosing to do to build a healthier, happier life. Like you become the architect of your own recovery.
Yes, exactly.
Which is so empowering when you really think about it. So if you're listening to this right now and something's clicking for you, don't be afraid to dig a little deeper. Do some research. Maybe talk to a professional. See if if a holistic treatment might be that missing piece you've been searching for.
I couldn't agree more.
It's like saying, we see you. You're not just this one thing, this addiction. You're this whole complex person with all these different facets.
Yeah.
All of that matters.
Yeah, it's about like recognizing that there's so much more to you than just this one struggle, right?
Exactly. So it's not just about, okay, stop doing this one thing. It's about who do you want to be? What kind of life do you want to create for yourself?
Absolutely. It's about getting back in touch with that, like that core part of yourself,
Yeah.
the part that maybe got lost along the way.
And that's where things like meditation and yoga and even just paying attention to what you're eating come in.
Right. They all kind of tie into this idea of like building awareness, right? So you can start making choices that really support you, your mind, your body, the whole package.
It's not about deprivation. It's about empowerment. It's like saying, hey, you have a choice here. You can choose a different path.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty amazing takeaway, I think, even for someone who's not necessarily, in recovery, but just wants to live a richer life.
Totally. And it actually brings up something I always like to leave people with when we're talking about holistic treatment. It's this idea that real healing, like truly healing, it usually involves looking at every part of ourselves, The physical stuff, the mental stuff, the emotional, even the spiritual.
It's about wholeness.
Exactly. Holistic treatment, it honors that. And it gives you this way to approach recovery that's not just about, I'm not doing this anymore. It's about, I'm choosing to live a life that's full of vitality, full of purpose.
I love that. It's not about absence. It's about presence. It's about showing up for yourself exactly as you are and building a life that reflects that. Wow, this has been such an eye-opening conversation.
It really has. I've loved getting to chat about this with you.
And to all you deep divers listening, if any of this resonated with you, don't let it stop here. Keep digging. Do your research. Maybe talk to a therapist or someone who specializes in this type of treatment. See if it's the right fit for you. Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep diving deep.